Hey guys, it's Mrs. Klein.
And Mrs. Woolbrin, guess what? It is time for a podcast.
Awesome. Woohoo! We're here for the second podcast, you guys, for Lesson 13. Lesson 13, remember, is called A Growing Sense of Nationhood. There was an essential question, a guiding question that you should be well aware of, which is what did it mean to be an American in the early 1800s? Last podcast, we talked about things that had to do with like economics and the judicial system and there's kind of this growing sense of nationhood.
Mhm.
And this next section, we're going to talk about art, music, and also literature.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And really, I mean, Americans were developing this identity, right? And they do this also through the arts. I mean, it's just not all politics.
There you go.
So, first thing we're going to talk about is early American art. Americans had brought European art traditions with them to the colonies. But by the 1800s, they were expressing their national identity by developing styles all their own. Not all artists were professionals, and ordinary people produced many kinds of folk art. Some men carved weather vanes and hunting decoys, while women sewed spare bits of cloth into quilts. Typically, untrained artists created signs, murals, and images of national symbols like the American flag. Such folk art was simple, direct, and often very colorful.
Okay, most professional artists during this period made a living doing portraits, which tried to capture the personalities and emotions of the subjects. The best known portrait artist at this time was a guy by the name of Gilbert Stuart.
Yeah. Strangely enough, it was an Englishman whose work led to a uniquely American brand of fine art. When Thomas Cole arrived from England in 1818, he fell in love with the immense and varied American landscape. Fellow artists followed Cole's example and started what became known as the Hudson River School of Painting. These painters focused on nature rather than people, often choosing to paint broad, scenic vistas.
Just to kind of show the beauty of the United States, the beauty of America.
And almost like the immensity of some of these, landscapes.
Yes, that were just so huge and man so small in them, but just totally filled with grandeur, beautiful light. You guys will look at some pictures. They're gorgeous.
Yeah.
All right. Other artists portrayed more particular aspects of nature. John James Audubon painted finely detailed portraits of birds. And Philadelphia's George Catlin turned his eye on the natives of the American West.
By choosing as their subjects the wondrous features of their new country, Americans gave their art a distinct identity. At times, they presented dangerous landscapes in deceptively positive tones. Still, the vividness and optimism of their work accurately reflected the national outlook.
And I know it inspired a lot of people, you guys, to kind of move west and see things. I know those of you guys who have me or had me last year know that I go to Zion every year and I run. And there was a guy who goes to Zion, I wish I could remember his name, and he paints these beautiful pictures and he shows them at like I think that it was a World's Fair. And no one could believe that that landscape was actually real. And it inspired many people to move west to kind of see it for themselves.
Yeah.
So just really unique features of our country. All right, now we're going to move in and talk a little bit about early American music.
Okay. Americans' national identity was also expressed through music. With growing prosperity came an outburst of musical activity. In the North, orchestras played classical music from Europe. In the South, slaves combined the hymns of white churchgoers with African musical styles to create spirituals. As demand for popular songs grew, composers answered with a stream of patriotic anthems.
Okay, all right, now a little bit about early American literature. Like the patrons of the Hudson River School, writers began to use uniquely American subjects and settings. One of the first to achieve literary fame was Washington Irving. He drew on German folklore for his colorful tales of Rip Van Winkle and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but he set them in the wilds of upstate New York. Irving's enchanted stories were an immediate hit.
One of the nation's first novelists was James Fenimore Cooper. In books such as The Pioneers and The Last of the Mohicans, Cooper wrote about the adventures of settlers in the wilderness. Davy Crockett, a real-life frontiersman who spun tall tales about his life as a hunter, soldier, and explorer. And there was also New England's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, was one of the first serious American poets.
Okay. In both subject matter and style, writers like these encouraged the growth of a national identity. In particular, they promoted the myth of rugged individualism that, for many people, at home and abroad, best characterized the United States.
Yeah. So just to kind of review here, I think it's important to remember American art forms also helped the nation develop a unique identity. Ordinary people created American folk art, such as the carved weather vanes that we talked about and the patchwork quilts. Painters of the Hudson River School created artworks that highlighted the landscape's natural beauty. And George Catlin painted scenes of American Indian life.
New forms of music included spirituals and patriotic anthems. Square dancing, okay, all right, danced by 4 couples at a time to fiddle music, became popular. I had to do that every Friday when I was in 6th grade, and my partner had to be my teacher, Mr.
Yes.
Seeley.
Do you remember
Okay,
square
yes,
dancing?
totally did square dancing. Okay, every
We
day in
did
6th
too.
grade. I was still in elementary school then. All right, writers used uniquely American settings and subjects to create such stories as Washington Irving's Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and popular novels like James Fenimore Cooper's The Pioneers and The Last of the Mohicans.
Okay, and with that, we are done. Cheerio, guys.
All right, see you soon-ish.